Hey, beautiful people. My name is Kristen. Thank you for stopping by my BookTube channel to talk about some books. This is the classic and the nonfiction book that I read in the month of February, and I really thought they paired really well together, and they were deserving of their standalone video review. So, I read JRR Tolkien's Silmarillion, and it is so many things. So if you have a love of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, this is definitely worthwhile. I was kind of scared of it because I had heard that it was a little bit heady or academic, and it is a little bit. I would almost call it a Bible to the Middle Earth realm, because it actually is 5 short stories, with the Silmarillion in the middle being the biggest one, and it talks about the creation of Middle Earth. It talks about the power and nature of the gods and the ruling fantasy spiritual forces. It gives the story of the Silmarillion, which is basically, the Silmarils are stones that were created by one of the angel, powerful spiritual beings there were trees of gold and silver, and he took the powers of the light and put them into these stones, and then it's kind of the story of those stones' journey and how they are owned or possessed by different people or beings at different times, and trying to, share that journey based off of actually the struggle for establishing Middle Earth and all of the things that were going on there. And I'm trying to do this without giving spoilers, but I am going to assume that you kind of know the general premise of Middle Earth, with the elves and the dwarves and the hobbits and the search for the One Ring of Power. So this is before all that. And if you've watched the movies, that first part of the movie of the Lord of the Rings, where the Fellowship of the Rings, where they're talking about the backstory, that backstory is in here. And I'm happy to say the movies just do such a good job. The only difference was that how the book usually has more than the movie. So there was more to the story when Isildur takes the ring in the battle, and before he loses it in the river. When I was watching the movie, that seemed to happen in the same scene, and it does not. There is some more story to that. So, like I said, it's maybe a little spoilerish for Lord of the Rings, and I'll note that, but not really even that much, because that information is given to you in the prologue of the movie, and I don't think it is in the prologue of the book, though. I think this is technically the prologue to the book, if you will. It does have the story that talks about all of that, the One Ring of Power and being lost, and then we pick up the story in The Hobbit. It introduces to you the characters of Sauron and kind of how his power and corruption originates. It has Galadriel in here, and Elrond, the elves, and talks about some of their long life. They are in here, and Gandalf, of course. So it is just one of those books that I had to stop and kind of spend more time. I usually read about a page a minute, but this was more like 2 minutes a page, like really concentrating, world building, character building, just very, very detailed and beautiful, as JRR writes. Then for my nonfiction, I read Tolkien's modern reading. This was actually given to me by my coworker for Valentine's like 3 years ago, and I'm just now getting to it. And the reason why she bought it for me was because her son-in-law was taking a class at university on the writings of Tolkien, and this was one of his kind of textbook readings. And basically the premise of this book is that it looks at works of modern fiction, and for them modern they mean modern according to JRR Tolkien's life, so no more than 50 years before he was born, and that he would have been exposed to. And it's not just that he would have been exposed to, but there's proof that he was exposed to. He definitively owned them, he quoted them, he talked about them. There is evidence that he actually read it. And then sometimes there's evidence that he said, this influenced me, or this was important to me, or this particular writing was really influential. But a lot of times, not so much. It'll just be that he mentioned that he read such and such in a letter to a friend. And then this author kind of fleshes that out and says, well, in that writing, this, and this happens. And in Tolkien's writing, this, and this is somewhat similar. So it's kind of an interesting process to weigh. Most of the writers and biographers talking about his life really focus and emphasize his medieval studies and influences, because that was really his jam. That was what he really loved. And of course we can tell that in his writings. But not a whole lot had been said about some of the newer, more contemporary things. And this author Ordway felt like that had really been discounted, and so he wanted to do an in-depth study on that. And it was very fascinating, very interesting, and it was awesome reading about what he read and about what influenced him, and just getting like some more backstories, right, on how probably a lot of this stuff came up. And the hobbits were particularly just nuanced. There was just thing after thing after thing after thing, and I kind of think that those were kind of close to his heart as far as his Middle Earth races, just because they got their own little series there right at the beginning, right? So I kind of feel like if we were all a little bit more like hobbits, the world might be a better place. So that is the kind of more in-depth reviews of those two books. I will give a quick summary in my monthly wrap-up of all the books that I've read, which is probably going to be around 10 books again, but I wanted to do these separately because I felt like they are worthy and deserving. And if you are like me and you've been a little intimidated to pick up the Silmarillion, go ahead and do it. It's really, really fascinating and beautiful and a great read. I highly recommend it. Happy reading, y'all.